World of Warcraft has accidentally spent 20 years perfecting the art of making you love villains before they destroy everything you care about. Every expansion, every raid, every moment of heartbreak traces back to antagonists so compelling that millions of players still debate whether they were evil or just misunderstood. That's why today I'm breaking down every single major World of Warcraft villain and exactly why they still haunt the franchise 2 decades later. Starting with the one that defined what a video game villain could be, the Lich King. Arthas Menethil is either the greatest villain in gaming history or the most tragic hero who ever lived, and both statements feel true. Arthas was a paladin prince corrupted by Frostmourne, who became the undead Lich King. Classic corruption arc. But here's where it gets complicated. Arthas never wanted power. He wanted to save his people. When the plague of undeath infected Stratholme, he ordered every citizen culled before they could turn. Uther refused, calling it mass murder. Arthas did it anyway, slaughtering thousands to prevent millions from dying. The prince who killed his people to save them had already lost before Frostmourne ever touched his hand. His descent accelerated in Northrend. He claimed Frostmourne, despite warnings it would steal his soul, murdered his friend Muradin for questioning him, burned his ships to trap his men, and framed his officers for it. By the time he killed his father King Tyrannus with "Succeeding you, father," Arthas the Paladin was already dead. Frostmourne just made it official. Wrath of the Lich King built an entire storyline around his methodical destruction of hope. Every quest, every zone revealed he wasn't trying to kill champions. He was testing them. The Ice Crown Citadel encounter proved it when at 10% health, Arthas wiped the entire raid with a single spell and declared his plan. Raise Azeroth's greatest heroes as his undead generals. Only Tyrion shattering Frostmourne saved everyone. His death scene remains gaming's most heartbreaking villain farewell. Father, is it over? Arthas asks as his humanity briefly returns. No king rules forever, my son, Tyrannus' spirit replies. I see only darkness before me. Then he dies, and Bolvar takes the helm of domination because there must always be a Lich King. But if you think one tragic prince defines WoW villainy, wait until you hear about the fallen titan who orchestrated literally everything, Sargeras. Sargeras is either the most justified villain in Warcraft history or a genocidal maniac who murdered the entire Titan pantheon, and honestly, the lore makes both arguments equally valid. Here's the thing, every single war in Warcraft traces back to this one fallen titan, the Burning Legion, the corruption of the orcs, Arthas becoming the Lich King, Illidan's transformation, Deathwing's madness. All of it connects to Sargeras, and that's not hyperbole. Originally called the Defender, Sargeras was the strongest warrior among the Titans, charged with hunting demons across the cosmos. He was the good guy. Then he discovered the Void Lords were trying to corrupt nascent Titan world souls into weapons of universal destruction. His solution was apocalyptic. Destroy all life in the universe before the Void could corrupt it. The Pantheon refused. So Sargeras killed them all, shattered his demon prison world Mardum, and created the Burning Legion from the released horrors. His recruitment strategy was brutal efficiency. He found the Eridar leaders Kill Jaden and Archimonde on Argus, and transformed them into demon lords through fell corruption. They became his chief lieutenants in a crusade to burn every world in existence. The scale is insane. He manipulated Queen Ashura during the War of the Ancients 10,000 years before WoW even starts. He personally burned out Illidan's eyes and created the first demon hunter. He corrupted the Guardian Medivh to open the Dark Portal. He orchestrated 3 separate invasions of Azeroth spanning decades of real-world Warcraft content. Legion expansion brought players to Argus itself for the final battle. The revived Titan Pantheon imprisoned Sargeras at the seat of the Pantheon, with Illidan volunteering as his eternal jailer. But Sargeras got the last word. He plunged his massive sword into Silithus, causing Azeroth's world soul to bleed Azerite, and defining the entire battle for Azeroth expansion. That blade is still embedded in the planet, a permanent reminder that cosmic-level threats leave cosmic-level scars. But at least Sargeras had a philosophy. Unlike the Demon Hunter, who spent 10,000 years claiming he sacrificed everything. Illidan Stormrage. Illidan Stormrage is either the most selfless hero in Warcraft, or a power-hungry traitor who deserved every moment of his 10,000-year imprisonment. And his arc across 2 decades proves both interpretations have merit. Imprisoned for 10,000 years, banished from my own homeland, and now you dare enter my realm? You are not prepared, became one of gaming's most quoted lines. But most players have zero idea what actually made him the betrayer. Born with rare golden eyes marking him for greatness, Illidan trained in arcane magic, while his twin brother Malfurion became the first druid. Both loved Tyrande Whisperwind. She chose Malfurion. That rejection planted seeds of resentment that would grow for millennia. During the War of the Ancients, Illidan infiltrated the Burning Legion as a double agent. Sargeras himself burned out Illidan's eyes, replacing them with Fellfire and demonic demonic tattoos, creating the original demon hunter. He helped close the demon portal and save the world. His reward, discovery that he'd secretly created a new well of eternity, earned him the title Betrayer and 10,000 years imprisoned beneath Mount Highjaw. The Third War freed him. He consumed the skull of Gul'dan, transforming into a winged demon with immense power. His service to Kil'jaeden and retreat to Outland positioned him as the Burning Crusade's primary antagonist. Players killed him in Black Temple in 2007, except his death scene contained prophecy. You have won, Maiev, but the Huntress is nothing without the hunt. You are nothing without me. Legion proved him right. Resurrected as a weapon against the Burning Legion, the Naru Zera attempted to forcibly purify him with the light. Illidan's response defined his character forever. I am my scars. He destroyed her, rejecting redemption because he never believed he needed it. His voluntary imprisonment as Sargeras's eternal jailer provided perfect closure. The betrayer who sacrificed everything found an eternal purpose. The Demon Hunter class allows players to walk his path, and you are not prepared. Remains gaming shorthand for brutal difficulty. But if you think one demon's redemption arc is complicated, wait until you hear about the dragon who literally broke the entire game world. Deathwing. Neltharion the Earth Warder was either the most tragic victim of old god corruption in Warcraft, or a genocidal monster who chose power over sanity, and the fact that he literally reshaped 42% of Azeroth's landscape makes the distinction irrelevant. Neltharion was originally the dragon aspect charged with protecting Azeroth's deep places. His proximity to imprisoned old gods proved fatal. N'Zoth's whispers slowly corrupted his mind over millennia, until the noble Earth Warder became Deathwing the Destroyer. 10,000 years of recovery in Deepholm ended with the Cataclysm. Deathwing's violent emergence didn't just damage Azeroth, it fundamentally changed it. The Barrens split into two separate zones. Thousand Needles flooded completely underwater. Darkshore was devastated by tsunamis that rewrote the coastline. Aberdeen was destroyed. Coastlines across eastern kingdoms and Kalimdor changed permanently. The terror was random and absolute. Deathwing would fly over zones without warning and incinerate everyone below with cataclysm breath. His declaration captured his apocalyptic presence perfectly. I am Deathwing, the Destroyer, the end of all things. Inevitable, indomitable. I am the Cataclysm. Madness of Deathwing revealed his completely corrupted form, destroyed only by the Dragon Soul, powered by all remaining aspects sacrificing their Titan-given powers. That sacrifice ended the Age of Dragons and began the Age of Mortals. No other villain has forced such permanent consequences. But at least Deathwing was corrupted by external forces, unlike the Warchief who chose pride over everything his people stood for. Garrosh Hellscream. Garrosh Hellscream is either the most tragic product of terrible mentorship in Warcraft, or a genocidal war criminal who got exactly what he deserved, and the community has been violently arguing about this for over a decade. Here's where it gets messy. Players first met Garrosh in Burning Crusade as a depressed, self-doubting orc in Nagrand, ashamed that his father Grom had cursed the entire orc race with demon blood. Thrall showed him the truth. Grom died heroically, killing Manaroth to free the orcs from corruption. This revelation transformed shame into overwhelming pride. Too much pride. Thrall made Garrosh Warchief of the Horde, and everything went wrong immediately. During Mists of Pandaria, Garrosh pursued orc supremacy at any cost. The bombing of Theramore using a mana bomb marked his descent into war criminal status. His discovery and corruption of the heart of Yashar, a dead old god's literal heart buried beneath Pandaria, pushed him into full villain territory. He used its power to corrupt the Veil of Eternal Blossoms and fuel his warmongering. The Siege of Orgrimmar brought combined Alliance and Rebel Horde forces to his doorstep. His defiant declaration captured his worldview. You call yourselves Horde? You are nothing but maggots. The true Horde will sweep across this world like wildfire. Even at trial in Pandaria, surrounded by every faction leader, Garrosh proclaimed, I regret nothing. Zero remorse. Zero redemption. Bronze Dragon Kairos helped him escape to alternate Draenor, where Garrosh created the Iron Horde and triggered Warlords of Draenor. His death came during Mak'gora against Thrall, but Garrosh's final accusation rang painfully true. You made me Warchief. You left me to pick up your pieces. You made me what I am. Many players agreed. Thrall placed an unprepared, unstable leader in charge of the entire Horde, and then abandoned him. The debate continues. Was Garrosh always destined for corruption, or did Thrall's terrible judgment create a monster? But if you think one Warchief's fall from grace caused controversy, wait until you hear about the Banshee Queen who committed actual genocide. Sylvanas Windrunner. Sylvanas Windrunner is either a victim of decades of torment who finally broke, or a genocidal war criminal who burned thousands of innocents alive, and no redemption arc can justify it. And this debate has literally split the WoW community community in half. Sylvanas was Ranger General of Silvermoon, the greatest military commander the High Elves had. Arthas killed her, raised her as a banshee, and forced her to serve the Scourge while fully aware of her slavery. When the Lich King's power weakened, she broke free and founded the Forsaken, giving purpose to undead who had nowhere else to go. For years, she was morally complex but understandable, fighting for survival in a world that rejected the undead on sight. Her ascension to War Chief in Legion preceded WoW's most controversial moment in history, the burning of Teldrassil. Sylvanas ordered the World Tree burned with thousands of Night Elves trapped inside, committing genocide while players watched helplessly. "Burn it," she commanded, and any moral ambiguity evaporated instantly as innocents burned alive on screen. Battle for Azeroth revealed her working with the Jailer, believing she was breaking the cycle of death and freeing everyone from cosmic tyranny. Her betrayal came when she learned his true goal was universal domination, not liberation. She turned on him, declaring, "I will never serve." But the damage was done. Shadowlands introduced the Soul Split retcon, claiming Frostmourne had divided her soul when Arthas killed her, separating her good half and leaving only darkness and rage. The community exploded. Players called it a convenient excuse for genocide, a cheap redemption attempt for the irredeemable. Forum posts declared Blizzard was trying to absolve her of responsibility. Her sentence was eternally searching the maw for every soul she condemned, particularly the Night Elves who burned in Teldrassil. Some felt it was poetic justice. Others argued genocide cannot be redeemed regardless of punishment. The community remains violently divided on whether Sylvanas represented sophisticated tragedy or character assassination. Blizzard confirmed her eventual return in the World Soul Saga, guaranteeing this debate will continue for years. But at least Sylvanas had complex motivations. Unlike the Lich, who simply refused to stay dead no matter how many times players killed him. Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad is either the most persistent villain in World of Warcraft history or proof that Blizzard has zero idea when to let a character stay dead, and his appearances in Vanilla, Wrath, and Shadowlands make both statements factually correct. Here's the thing that makes Kel'Thuzad unique. He never wanted personal power. He wanted to serve. Originally Archmage Kel'Thuzad of Dalaran's Council of Six, one of the most prestigious positions in human magic, he answered the Lich King's psychic call and abandoned everything. He journeyed to Northrend, pledged himself to the Lich King, and became the architect of the Scourge's expansion across Lord Aeron. Arthas killed him as a mortal during Warcraft 3, then immediately resurrected him as a Lich using the Sunwell's power. That phylactery survived every defeat for 2 decades. Players killed him in Vanilla's Naxxramas in 2006. His phylactery was entrusted to a traitor. Players killed him again when Naxxramas relocated to Northrend in Wrath. His phylactery still survived because it was never destroyed. Shadowlands finally brought players inside the phylactery itself to destroy his soul remnant permanently. His absolute devotion to the Lich King made him different from every other villain. Sargeras wanted to burn the universe. Deathwing wanted to destroy Azeroth. Garrosh wanted Orc supremacy. Kel'Thuzad wanted to serve Arthas. Even as a Lich with godlike necromantic power, he positioned himself as loyal servant rather than independent threat. The Shadowlands appearance proved controversial. Many players felt bringing him back a third time diminished his impact, turning a memorable recurring villain into an overused plot device. Others appreciated the closure of finally destroying his phylactery after 15 years. But at least Kel'Thuzad served the Lich King, unlike the Demon Lord, who orchestrated catastrophes across 25,000 years for nothing but revenge. Kil'jaeden. Kil'jaeden, the Deceiver, is either the most successful villain in Warcraft history, or proof that 25,000 years of scheming means nothing if you die before seeing results. And his body count across the entire franchise makes both statements terrifyingly accurate. While Archimonde commanded the Burning Legion's military might, Kil'jaeden shaped its schemes. Every catastrophe players experience traces back to his manipulations, and that's not an exaggeration. His origin was tragic. 25,000 years before WoW, Sargeras found the Eridar on Argus and offered them power. Prophet Velen received a vision of their corruption and fled with loyal followers, becoming the Draenei. Kil'jaeden and Archimonde accepted. Sargeras transformed them into demon lords through fell corruption, making them the Legion's chief lieutenants. Kil'jaeden's vendetta against Velen for abandoning him drove his actions for the next 25 millennia. He hunted the Draenei across countless worlds, destroying each one they settled. Finding them on Draenor, Kil'jaeden executed his masterpiece of manipulation. He corrupted the orc shaman Ner'zhul, then Gul'dan, transforming peaceful shamanistic orcs into the bloodthirsty horde. The corruption of an entire species became a weapon aimed at the Draenei. When Gul'dan opened the Dark Portal, Kil'jaeden exported that weapon to Azeroth. When Ner'zhul failed him, Kil'jaeden's punishment was creative horror. He transformed the shaman's tortured spirit into the Lich King, imprisoned in the Frozen Throne, and deployed the Scourge to soften Azeroth for Legion invasion. Arthas, the Scourge, Naxxramas, the entire Third War, all Kil'jaeden's design. His Sunwell Plateau appearance showed only his upper body emerging from the corrupted well before players repelled him. He never fully manifested on Azeroth before being driven back, a humiliating defeat. Legion brought his permanent end. Players pursued him to his command ship above Argus. The difference this time was critical. He was killed in the Twisting Nether, the only realm where demons die permanently. His death closed a villain arc spanning 25 years of real-world content. But if you think demon lords define cosmic evil, wait until you hear about the Fire Lord who taught an entire generation what raiding actually meant. Ragnaros. The Fire Lord is either the most iconic raid boss in World of Warcraft history or simply the first real raid boss most players ever experienced. And the fact that "by fire be purged" is still quoted 2 decades later proves both statements are exactly right. Before you dismiss this as pure nostalgia, understand what Ragnaros represented in 2004. Molten Core was the first 40-player raid most players ever attempted. Coordinating 40 people through voice chat and raid frames that barely worked was chaos. Then you reached the final chamber. The spectacle of Ragnaros emerging from a lava pool 10 times larger than any previous boss, with flames wreathing his massive form, established WoW's tradition of visually overwhelming final encounters. His voice shook speakers. "By fire be purged" became gaming's most iconic boss line overnight. His lore explained Blackrock Mountain's existence. Dark Iron Dwarves accidentally summoned him 250 years before WoW during the War of the Three Hammers, attempting to gain power against rival clans. His arrival created Blackrock Mountain, transformed the region into the Searing Gorge, and spawned the Burning Steppes in a single catastrophic event. Vanilla's Ragnaros was only partially summoned, explaining his lower body remaining in lava. He couldn't be permanently killed outside his home plane. Cataclysm brought players to the Firelands itself, where Ragnaros manifested completely with legs, standing hundreds of feet tall. The heroic mode achievement, Only the Penitent, required players to kneel before his flaming hammer slam or be instantly killed. His permanent death in the Firelands closed the Fire Lord's story, but his cultural impact persisted. "By fire be purged" appears in memes and references completely divorced from WoW context. Ragnaros transcended being a raid boss and became a cultural touchstone. But if you think one Fire Lord defined vanilla raiding, wait until you hear about the old god who was built up for 15 years only to die in the worst ending Blizzard ever produced, N'Zoth. N'Zoth is either the most successful cosmic horror villain World of Warcraft ever created, or the most disrespected antagonist in gaming history, and his 15-year build-up followed by a single patch death proves both statements are devastatingly accurate. Here's where it gets dark. N'Zoth was canonically the weakest old god physically, but the most cunning psychologically. While Sithun commanded armies, and Yogg-Saron drove mortals insane, N'Zoth worked through manipulation and whispers from his underwater prison beneath the ocean. His influence shaped Warcraft's history more than any other old god. He corrupted Neltharion into Deathwing 10,000 years before WoW, creating the Cataclysm villain. He saved Queen Azshara during the Sundering and transformed her into the Naga Queen, gaining a powerful servant. He mastered the Emerald Nightmare, corrupting the dream itself. His whispers echoed through Cataclysm, Legion, and Battle for Azeroth, building anticipation for over a decade. Battle for Azeroth finally freed him through Azshara's machinations. His Black Empire spread across Azeroth, corrupting zones and driving NPCs insane. The build-up suggested an expansion-defining threat. Then came Ni'alotha, the Waking City. The raid lasted 1 patch, 8 bosses. N'Zoth was the final encounter where players used the Forge of Origination to destroy him. The ending cinematic showed Wrathion activating the Forge, a beam of light hitting N'Zoth, and him dissolving. No monologue, no final revelation. Magni declared the wound in the world is healing, and that was it. An old god built up for 15 years died in 8 minutes of cutscenes. The community response was nuclear. Is the ending cinematic an out-of-season April Fool's joke? Became the top Reddit thread with 40,000 upvotes. Players called it the worst raid ending in WoW history. Forum posts declared 15 years of build-up for this. The criticism was so intense that Blizzard reportedly unlisted the ending cinematic on YouTube temporarily. The core complaint was simple. An old god whose machinations shaped 2 expansions deserved more than a single patch. Many argued the Black Empire warranted its own expansion. Others suggested N'Zoth should have been Shadowlands' villain instead of the jailer. N'Zoth remains a cautionary tale about rushing long-anticipated villains. His cosmic horror elements were executed perfectly. His whispers were terrifying. His influence was omnipresent. Then Blizzard treated him like a mid-tier raid boss and moved on. But if you think one old god got disrespected, wait until you hear about the Shadowlands villain who retroactively ruined 20 years of lore, the Jailer. Zaval. The Jailer is either the worst villain in World of Warcraft's 20-year history or the worst villain in MMO history period. And the universal hatred he generated from players, lore enthusiasts, and casual viewers proves this isn't even controversial. The Shadowlands ending cinematic became one of the most disliked WoW videos ever uploaded. Forum threads calling him Dollar Store Thanos received tens of thousands of upvotes. Content creators made hour-long videos dissecting why his character failed. The backlash was so severe that it influenced Blizzard's storytelling direction for subsequent expansions. The surface explanation seemed fine. Zoval was originally the Arbiter who judged souls in the Shadowlands, imprisoned in the Maw for attempting to remake reality, now seeking freedom and cosmic domination. Shadowlands revealed the Jailer orchestrated the Lich King's creation, the Scourge, Frostmourne, Arthas's fall, and multiple expansions worth of events through retroactive continuity. Players watched beloved villains like Arthas get reduced to puppets of the Jailer's master plan. The community erupted in fury at this single-handedly wrecking over 2 decades of world and lore building. His motivation was incomprehensible. He collected sigils like Infinity Stones for vague reality remaking goals never clearly explained. His dialogue consisted of ominous statements like, "All will serve," and the cycle must be broken without substance behind them. When finally defeated, his dying words were, "A divided cosmos will not survive what is to come. I will set us all free." Players mocked it instantly as meaningless villain babble. The visual design failed too. A muscular bald man with chains and a hole in his chest looked generic compared to Arthas's iconic armor or Deathwing's corrupted majesty. He radiated no presence, no charisma, no memorable qualities beyond being forgettable. The Sylvanas connection made everything worse. Her entire Battle for Azeroth villain arc was revealed as manipulation by the Jailer, undermining her agency. When she finally turned on him, it felt like damage control rather than satisfying character development. Community criticism crystallized. The Jailer was introduced and killed in one expansion without proper buildup. His retcons damaged beloved characters. His motivations were incomprehensible, and his design was forgettable. Blizzard has essentially pretended Shadowlands didn't happen in subsequent marketing. He remains the textbook example of how not to create a cosmic villain, a warning that good villains require careful construction rather than mysterious statements and vague threats. But if you think the Jailer represents WoW's lowest point for antagonists, wait until you hear about the queen who survived everything and is still waiting to claim her throne. Queen Azshara. Queen Azshara is either the most powerful living antagonist in World of Warcraft or the most underestimated threat still waiting in the shadows. And the fact that she escaped Battle for Azeroth completely undefeated makes both statements absolutely terrifying. Azshara ruled the Night Elf Empire 10,000 years before WoW as its most beloved queen and most cruel tyrant simultaneously. Her beauty was legendary, her magical power unmatched, her vanity infinite. Even the demon Manaroth, one of the Burning Legion's most powerful commanders, recognized she was a force against which only his lord Sargeras and Archimond would prove superior. A demon lord acknowledged a mortal sorceress could defeat him. Her arrogance opened the door for the Burning Legion's first invasion during the War of the Ancients. She welcomed demons into her palace, believing she could control Sargeras himself. When the Well of Eternity collapsed, and the Sundering tore the continent apart, she made a deal with N'Zoth rather than drown. The old god transformed her and her followers into the Naga, giving them aquatic forms to rule the ocean depths. But here's the critical detail everyone misses. She never served N'Zoth. She negotiated to be queen at his side rather than servant. The distinction matters because Azshara has always viewed herself as equal to cosmic powers, never subservient to them. The Eternal Palace raid in Battle for Azeroth revealed her masterpiece of manipulation. Players believed they were stopping her. They weren't. Every step empowered the heart of Azeroth exactly as she intended, creating the tool she needed to free N'Zoth from his prison. Players were her unwitting pawns. Then came the part that changes everything. After N'Zoth's defeat, Azshara didn't die. She escaped through a void portal, declaring she was tired of dealing with intermediaries and heralds and would claim the true throne of power. Azshara has 10,000 years of magical knowledge. Her Naz'atar empire remains intact underwater. She has no master constraining her actions. She's witnessed the fall of old gods, Burning Legion commanders, and Titan constructs. She's learned from every cosmic force and remains unbeholden to any of them. Blizzard has confirmed her story isn't finished. She's been set up as a future antagonist, and given her survival, power, and freedom from any master, she represents the most dangerous unresolved threat in WoW's current timeline. But at least Azshara was always powerful and ambitious. Unlike the old god who defined an entire expansion through psychological horror mechanics, C'Thun is either the most legendary raid encounter in World of Warcraft history or simply the first old god players ever faced, and the fact that he was mathematically impossible to defeat for 86 days after launch proves both statements are historically documented fact. The Gates of An-Shiraj event required server-wide cooperation that's never been attempted since. Every player on a server needed to collectively gather war supplies. 3.2 million total items including food, bandages, and materials. The 10-hour war that followed when gates opened featured massive outdoor battles that famously crashed servers. Multiple servers went down simultaneously as thousands of players fought Silithid swarms. C'Thun's psychological warfare defined cosmic horror in MMOs. His whispers during the encounter influenced every old god fight after. Death is close. Your friends will abandon you. You will betray your friends. These weren't flavor text. They were predictions. Raid groups collapsed from the stress. Guilds disbanded. The encounter broke players mentally before killing them mechanically. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. The fight was mathematically impossible at launch. Players discovered C'Thun's chain tentacle ability dealt more damage than any raid could survive, even with perfect execution. Top guilds threw themselves at the encounter for weeks, suspecting bugs. Blizzard silently adjusted values after 86 days, and guilds killed him within hours of the fix. The controversy sparked debates about testing credibility. The fight's design was revolutionary for 2006. Phase 1 required splitting 40 players to handle I-beams and tentacles simultaneously. Phase 2 descended into C'Thun's stomach, a fleshy chamber where tentacles erupted from walls, while the old god's body pulsed with dark energy. His giant eye dominated the chamber, following players with beams that chained through entire raid groups. The atmosphere was oppressive, alien, wrong. C'Thun's eye remains one of gaming's most iconic boss designs. His whispers became the template for psychological horror mechanics that every cosmic villain since has copied. But if you think C'Thun defined old god encounters through mathematical impossibility, wait until you hear about the old god whose raid fight set the standard for complex mechanics and terrifying lore revelations. Yogg-Saron. Yogg-Saron is either the most brilliantly designed raid encounter in World of Warcraft history or the old god that proved cosmic horror works best when it reveals truths you didn't want to know, and his Ulduar encounter delivering both simultaneously is why he remains the gold standard for boss design 15 years later. Bow down before the god of death. His declaration as players entered his prison chamber set the tone. Yogg-Saron was imprisoned beneath Ulduar by the Titans themselves, his corruption seeping through every crack in the facility. The sanity mechanic revolutionized old god encounters. Every player had a sanity bar that drained from witnessing Yogg-Saron's attacks and horrors. At 0 sanity, you went permanently insane, attacking your own raid until killed. Managing sanity became as critical as health and mana, forcing players to look away from certain attacks and hide behind clouds to preserve their grip on reality. Every subsequent cosmic horror boss in WoW has copied this mechanic because it worked perfectly. But here's where it gets genuinely disturbing. Phase 2 sent players into Yogg-Saron's mind to witness visions proving his influence over Warcraft's history. The assassination of King Lane by Garona during the First War. The creation of the Dragon Soul that corrupted Deathwing. The torture of Bolvar for Dragon, where Yogg-Saron whispered, "No king rules forever. Only death is eternal," prophesying Arthas's fall in the very next patch. These weren't random visions. They were proof that the old god had manipulated every major catastrophe players had experienced. His influence extended beyond Ulduar itself. Saronite, Yogg-Saron's hardened blood, was mined across Northrend throughout Wrath of the Lich King. The Scourge used it to build Ice Crown Citadel, meaning the fortress where players killed the Lich King was constructed from an old god's corrupted blood. Even Arthas's defeat was tainted by Yogg-Saron's lingering presence. The Keeper's dialogue after his defeat was haunting. The monster's mind is shattered, his dark mental control lost forever. But the beast's body lives on, dreaming of a time when it will destroy all that exists. Yogg-Saron wasn't truly dead. He was weakened, imprisoned again, still dreaming, still whispering, still waiting. The encounter's complexity, lore significance, and mechanical innovation made Yogg-Saron the template for every cosmic horror fight since. But if you think Yogg-Saron represents the peak of old god storytelling, wait until you hear about the Void entity who learned from every previous villain's mistakes and is currently the World Soul Saga's primary antagonist. Xal'atath. Xal'atath is either World of Warcraft's redemption after the Jailer catastrophe, or proof that Blizzard finally learned how to build a compelling Void antagonist, and the overwhelmingly positive community reception to her role in the War Within proves both statements are exactly what the franchise desperately needed. Here's where everything changes. After Shadowlands nearly destroyed player faith in WoW storytelling, Xal'atath represents a masterclass in how to construct an antagonist properly. And the difference is night and day. She first appeared as a sentient dagger during Legion, whispering cryptic lore to shadow priests, who wielded her as an artifact weapon. Her dialogue revealed forbidden knowledge about old gods, the Void Lords, and cosmic secrets most characters didn't comprehend. She wasn't a villain yet. She was a voice, a mystery, an entity with her own agenda that players couldn't quite define. The battle for Azeroth freed her essence from the blade. She possessed a night elf body, made deals with Queen Ashara, and disappeared into the void with objectives unknown. Then silence. No forced explanations. No rushed confrontations. Just absence that built anticipation organically. Dragonflight brought her back perfectly. She beckoned Iridikron, the most radical of the primal incarnates, through a void gate with promises of power against the Titans. The cinematic of her emergence, whispering seductively about freedom and revenge, generated massive excitement. Players recognized this was different. She had personality, charisma, mystery that enhanced rather than frustrated. The War Within made her the central antagonist, as Harbinger of the Void, appointed by Void Lord Dimensius himself. Her corruption of the Nerubians and goal of corrupting Azeroth's world soul connects directly to WoW's deepest cosmic stakes. The same threat that drove Sargeras mad. The same corruption the Titans feared above all else. Her ambitions aren't generic destruction. Their existential horror on a universal scale. Xal'atath was established gradually across 4 expansions. She has distinct personality and memorable voice acting. Her knowing smirk in the Shadow and Fury cinematic became beloved iconography instantly. Her seductive manipulation feels genuinely threatening rather than cartoonishly evil. She's been present, building influence, making calculated moves. Players understand her goals. Corrupt Azeroth's world soul for the Void Lords. Simple, clear. Stakes couldn't be higher. The World Soul Saga confirms she'll remain the primary antagonist through Midnight and the Last Titan, giving her arc proper development time. 3 full expansions to build threat, reveal motivation, and deliver satisfying confrontation. As the Harbinger of the Void with 3 expansions to develop, Xal'atath represents renewed hope that World of Warcraft can deliver cosmic horror storytelling worthy of its greatest villains. 20 years of lessons, failures, and triumphs have led to this moment. The Void's champion stands ready, and for once, players are excited rather than skeptical about what comes next. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.